You see, when a man or a woman first glimpses the eternal, when the curtain of separation trembles and falls away, something remarkable happens. It feels as though the whole universe has suddenly taken a deep breath through you. There's a burst of clarity, a tremendous sense of, ah. So this is what it has been about all along. It is as if you have woken from a long, uneasy dream and discovered that you were the dreamer all along. And what do? The moment that happens, we rush to tell someone, because the mind, you see, is a chatterbox. It wants to name, to compare, to announce. The very same mind that was humbled into silence by the mystery now wants to write a press release about it. It says, "At last, I've seen it. I must tell the world what I've discovered." It is perfectly natural. Every revelation, whether scientific or spiritual, awakens this desire to share. The heart wants to sing, the tongue wants to speak, but the trouble begins when you try to translate infinity into English. It's like trying to scoop the ocean into a teacup and then serve it politely to your friends. You know, there's a kind of innocent comedy in it. We imagine that by describing the sky, we can hand someone a piece of blue. We want to make them see what cannot be seen, the seer itself. But no matter how eloquently we speak, words turn the living moment into an echo. The divine joke, you might say, is that the more passionately we try to communicate enlightenment, the more we reveal our lingering attachment to being the one who knows. The self, that sly little actor, slips back onto the stage, bowing as the enlightened one, the teacher, the messenger of truth. Yet it was that very actor who was supposed to have vanished. And so the show begins again, another layer of illusion pretending to be wisdom. But don't scold yourself for it. It's all part of the play. The child who sees a rainbow runs to show everyone, not realizing that no one else will ever see quite the same rainbow. The light bends differently for each pair of eyes. So it is with awakening. Each experience of the infinite is utterly intimate. When you try to hand it over, it slips through your fingers like water. You cannot give awakening to anyone, because the one who gives and the one who receives are the same being, playing hide and seek. When you understand that, the compulsion to announce fades, not because it's forbidden, but because it's unnecessary. The truth, you see, doesn't need a salesman. It speaks in silence, in the glint of sunlight, on a window pane, in the laughter that arises without reason. The awakened man no longer needs to persuade anyone that he is awake, any more than the sky needs to explain that it is spacious. And yet, this urge, this first bursting enthusiasm to proclaim the infinite, is part of the beauty of it. It's the universe delighting in its own rediscovery, shouting through your throat, "Look, I found myself again." Eventually, though, the shouting turns to laughter, and the laughter fades into quiet wonder. Then you realize that there was never anything to announce. The infinite has always been announcing itself as you, as me, as everything that ever was or will be. So the next time you feel that thrilling impulse to tell the world what you've seen, smile gently. For the very one who wants to tell it is the story being told. You know, words are marvelous things. They are the music of thought, the echo of the mind trying to describe itself. With words, we paint, we sing, we build entire worlds out of sound. But here's the curious thing: what we build out of words is never quite the same as what we mean. Words are like maps, and no matter how accurate the map, it's never the territory. The map of China isn't China. You can't eat noodles off it, and you won't find mountains under your fingernails after touching it. And yet, human beings, clever as we are, often forget the difference. We fall in love with our symbols, our philosophies, our scriptures, as though they were the living truth itself. It's as if someone fell in love with the word honey and never bothered to taste the sweetness. You see, the moment you describe reality, you freeze it. Language is a snapshot, but life is motion. It's a bit like trying to dance about dancing. You can describe the steps, the rhythm, the gestures, but unless you're moving, it's all dead on the page. When people wake up or think they do, they often try to describe it. I felt one with everything, they say, and of course they did. But the moment the tongue moves, the oneness becomes two, the describer and the described. The miracle collapses into grammar. Now, this doesn't mean we shouldn't speak. Language is the poetry of consciousness, the way the universe talks to itself. But we must remember, it's poetry, not physics. A poem about fire doesn't burn. It only points toward the warmth. The sages of the East understood this very well. The Tao Te Ching begins by saying, "The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao." What a mischievous line to start a book with. It's as if Lao Tzu said, everything you're about to read is wrong, but read it anyway. Because words can't deliver truth, but they can suggest it. They can tickle the mind into silence. They can lead you, like a signpost, to the place where you no longer need signposts. The danger is not in words themselves, but in taking them too seriously, mistaking the pointing finger for the moon. You know, if you stare at the finger long enough, you miss the moon entirely, and that's the great trap of language. Even in spiritual circles, people argue endlessly about whose words are truer, whose scriptures are holier, whose doctrines are most correct, as though reality were a debating club. But life isn't interested in your definitions. It's too busy happening. The river doesn't pause to correct the dictionary's spelling of water. The moment you recognize this, you begin to play with words instead of being played by them. You can use language as a kind of art to evoke, not to imprison. You can dance with it, knowing full well that the dance is not the dancer. And when you speak of awakening, if you must, do so playfully. Know that you're sketching clouds, not carving stone. The beauty of clouds is precisely that they change, dissolve, reform. Let your words be like that light, moving, transparent, for words are not enemies of truth. They are its mischievous friends. They lead us astray only so that we can laugh when we realize we were home all along. And perhaps that's the most honest use of language to charm the mind into letting go of itself. So, speak if you wish, but speak as a musician plays, not to describe silence, but to remind others how it sounds when the notes finally fade. Now, once the words begin, something rather funny happens. We start to echo ourselves. The first utterance of insight, bright, clear, spontaneous, soon turns into a habit, a phrase repeated, a lesson rehearsed. Before long, the living moment of realization becomes a kind of echo chamber reverberating within the walls of our own certainty. Have you noticed how awakening, once named, becomes a badge? Someone says, "I have awakened," and suddenly there's a subtle division again. The awakened and the asleep, the enlightened and the ordinary. The poor ego, ever adaptable, puts on a saffron robe and learns to speak softly. It says, "I am no one," but takes great pride in being that particular no one. It's quite deliciously absurd. The self that vanished sneaks back through the side door, now disguised as the messenger of truth. And this is why, when you start to speak about your awakening, you often feel that strange dissonance, as if you're trying to describe a dream that evaporates the moment you wake. Because the more you talk about it, the more it becomes your story again, and the less it remains the living truth. The echo chamber is not only inside you, it exists in the world around you, too. People love to project their longings onto those who claim to have found it. They begin to listen to your words as if they were prescriptions rather than poetry. They ask, "How can I be like you?" And you, if you're not careful, begin to believe that you are something to be imitated. That is how the ancient game of teacher and follower begins. And although it has its beauty, it also has its pitfalls, because once there is a teacher, there must also be those who are not yet. And the dance of equality that awakening revealed begins to feel hierarchical again. The circle turns back into a ladder. Alan Watts might chuckle here and say, "It's the cosmic game of spiritual ping-pong. One side hits with I know, the other returns with teach me. And nobody notices that it's the same player swinging both paddles." You see, the danger of the echo is that it feels comforting. The mind loves to hear its own truths reflected back. It finds security in repetition. But awakening, if it means anything at all, is freedom from that security, the willingness to live without an echo, without the need to be right, without the safety of an audience nodding in agreement. The real master, if such a thing exists, is one who erases his own footprints as he walks, who refuses to build temples to his name, who understands that the moment you start collecting followers, you've already begun to follow yourself. This is why the truly awakened grow quieter with time. They speak less, laugh more. They stop trying to make converts and start enjoying the absurdity of it all, the whole business of enlightenment, packaged and sold like spiritual toothpaste. They see that what was sacred in the beginning has become marketable by the end. And they smile, because they know even this is part of the dance. So if you find yourself in that echo, if you catch the sound of your own voice repeating the same truth again and again, don't be alarmed. Simply listen to it fade. Let the sound of your own certainty dissolve into silence, as all echoes eventually do. For silence is the only audience that truly understands. And then, quite without trying, you return to the freshness of the first realization, the one that needed no explanation, no applause, no echo, just the quiet recognition that the one who speaks and the one who listens have always been the same. After the shouting comes the stillness. After the thunder of revelation, there is always the quiet rain that follows, soaking gently into the earth. In the same way, after the shock of awakening, there must come a silence in which what has been seen can take root. You see, when truth first bursts upon you, it's like a flash of lightning in the dark. Everything is illuminated, dazzling, ecstatic, overwhelming, and just like lightning, it disappears almost as quickly as it came, leaving you blinking in the afterglow. That is when the silence begins its work. Most people make the mistake of thinking that the awakening itself is the point. But in truth, it's only the spark. The real transformation happens in the long, unhurried hush that follows. It's in the quiet that the vision becomes embodied, that it seeps into your bones, into the way you breathe, the way you walk, the way you love. Now, this silence is not forced. It's not the grim discipline of the monk who has sworn off words. It is the natural stillness that arises when the mind no longer feels the need to explain itself. The silence of a lake that no longer ripples to reflect the clouds, but simply rests clear and undisturbed. The ego, of course, doesn't like this. It feels uneasy in silence. It wants to do something with the experience. Teach it, display it, package it, turn it into a brand. The mind will say, I must keep this alive by talking about it. But silence whispers, it is alive because you stop talking. Integration, you see, is not an activity. It's a kind of digestion. When you eat, you don't sit there telling your stomach what to do. You simply trust that the body knows. In the same way, after awakening, you must let the psyche digest what it has glimpsed. You must allow the vision to settle to become flesh, not just philosophy. In that period, there may be confusion. The world may look the same, yet feel entirely different. You might wonder, how do I live now? What do I do with this seeing? And the answer is disarmingly simple. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Let life do the integrating. Go for walks. Wash the dishes. Pay your bills. Listen to the birds. The silence between actions is your teacher now. For silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of awareness, uncolored by commentary. In silence, the realization matures. What began as a flash of insight slowly becomes a way of being. The self that once tried to sustain the experience is quietly dissolved into it. Then you discover that the silence was not something you entered, it was always there, waiting patiently beneath the noise. And here lies the great paradox. You do not master silence. Silence masters you. It draws you inward, not as withdrawal from life, but as deeper participation in it. You begin to see that silence and sound, doing and being, speaking and listening, are not opposites at all, but movements of the same rhythm. So, if you have awakened, resist the temptation to rush. Do not turn your first glimpse of the infinite into a new ambition. Sit quietly. Let the thunder fade. Let the rain fall. Trust that whatever has been revealed will find its own way to express itself through you, in its own time, in its own language. For silence is not a punishment. It is the universe catching its breath through you. Now, when silence begins to settle, something new and rather beautiful happens. You find that there is no longer any need to appear spiritual. You stop performing enlightenment like a trick. You stop trying to look wise, or calm, or awakened. You simply live, quietly, lightly, like a leaf that dances only when the wind asks it to. You see, there's a subtle difference between being awake and trying to be awake. The one who tries is still pretending that there's a you who must maintain an enlightened image, like a shopkeeper keeping the lights on for passing customers. But the real light, the light of awareness itself, never needed an audience. It shines whether anyone notices or not. This is what I call the art of invisible practice. It is not withdrawal from the world. It's blending with it so completely that you no longer feel separate from it. You move through life without leaving footprints, not because you hide, but because you no longer drag the heavy burden of self behind you. The invisible practice is not about doing anything at all. It's about allowing things to happen without resistance, without commentary, without the need to label each experience as spiritual or mundane. The awakened person doesn't divide life into sacred and profane. For him, washing the dishes and meditating under a tree are the same act when done in awareness. But of course, this cannot be forced. If you try to act humble, you're still acting. If you try to be invisible, you're already standing in the spotlight of your own intention. The trick, you see, is to forget that there's any trick at all. The Taoists had a phrase for this Wu Wei, which means effortless action or doing by not doing. It doesn't mean laziness. It means that your actions are like the wind moving through bamboo. The music happens, but no one's playing. When you live this way, life expresses itself through you naturally. You don't have to force it, and you certainly don't have to explain it. Invisible practice is living without self-consciousness. It's being utterly ordinary, drinking tea, answering an email, feeding the cat, and yet, behind each gesture, there's a stillness so complete it shines through everything you touch. You stop trying to make your life meaningful because you've seen that life is meaning, flowing all by itself. When people ask, how can I tell if someone is enlightened? I often say, you probably can't, because the truly awakened have no interest in displaying it. They don't gather followers or hang certificates on their wall. They might be sweeping a floor, fixing a bicycle, or telling a bad joke at the pub. They are invisible precisely because they've stopped trying to be anything special. You see, the flower doesn't announce its fragrance, and the ocean doesn't send invitations to admire its waves. The sun doesn't ask the planets to orbit it, it simply shines, and they do. That's how presence works. You don't project it. You embody it. You don't tell people you are awake. Your stillness reminds them that they are too. And that's the paradox of invisible practice. The less you try to influence others, the more deeply they are influenced by your being. People feel at ease around someone who doesn't demand, doesn't compare, doesn't need to prove. There's a kind of freedom in that. And everyone recognizes it instinctively, though they might not know why. So, practice invisibly, walk lightly, speak truthfully, but without preaching. Be nobody in particular, and let life, that great dancer, move you where it will. Then you will find that you don't need to announce your enlightenment, for the universe has been doing it through every sound, every leaf, every breath, since the beginning of time. You see, there's a curious thing about speaking of awakening. It's not that you shouldn't speak, but that you soon discover there are very few who can truly hear what you mean. Not because they lack ears, but because the message is not made of sound. It isn't information, it's transformation. And transformation can't be transferred by words. It's not like passing a coin from one hand to another. It's more like lighting one candle with another, and even then, the first flame must already be willing to burn. People often ask, how do I tell others what I've realized? But that question already contains the seed of its own answer. You see, when you feel you must tell, you haven't yet realized that what you discovered is already being told by every bird, every breeze, every movement of existence. The universe is whispering it continuously. There's a kind of magnetic resonance between souls who are ready to hear. When the insight has ripened within you, when the silence has done its work, you will find that the right people simply appear. You don't recruit them. You don't persuade them. They recognize you not by what you say, but by what they feel in your presence, a stillness, a lack of grasping, a gentle humor. The Buddha didn't go door to door selling enlightenment. He sat quietly under a tree, and those who were ready found him. You might say, the silence advertised him better than any sermon could. Now, that doesn't mean you should hide away or guard your insights like treasure. But understand this, words are like seeds. If you cast them into soil that isn't yet fertile, they'll only lie there dormant, or worse, they'll provoke confusion, resistance, and even hostility. So the wise gardener plants where the soil is soft. He doesn't blame the hard ground. He just waits for the season to change. When you speak prematurely of awakening, you may notice something. People either dismiss you, misunderstand you, or put you on a pedestal. And in all three cases, communication fails. The first turns away, the second reshapes your words to fit their old beliefs, and the third worships you instead of seeing themselves. So, it's not that the world isn't ready, it's that the world plays its part. The unready must remain unready for a while, or the play would end too soon. Life needs its sleepers as much as its dreamers. The dream must continue long enough for awakening to mean something. Therefore, do not rush to wake the world. Let your understanding shine quietly through your eyes, your laughter, your patience. Let it be felt rather than spoken. Those who are meant to hear will hear, not because you spoke loudly, but because your being became a tuning fork for the same silent truth within them. You don't find the audience, you become the frequency that calls them home. And even then, remember this, the audience you think you are addressing is only another version of yourself. The one listening is the same one who speaks. So the entire act of teaching, of sharing, of transmitting wisdom is really consciousness talking to itself, pretending to have forgotten. When you see that, you stop worrying about who's listening. You stop trying to convince. You start to enjoy the cosmic theater of misunderstanding, knowing it's all part of the same divine comedy. So, speak when it happens naturally. Be silent when silence feels right. Neither is holier than the other. For in truth, there is no teacher and no student, only the one playing both parts, endlessly, beautifully, foolishly, wisely. And that, my friends, is the secret of finding the audience that is ready. Stop looking for them. The readiness itself will find you. There comes a time after the long silence when speaking happens again, but this time it is different. You are no longer the one trying to say something. The words simply rise like a breeze through an open window, and you realize they are not yours. They belong to the same mysterious power that makes trees grow and stars shine. Before, you may have spoken to impress, to persuade, to explain. But now, expression flows without purpose, without effort, like the bird that sings because it must, not because it seeks applause. The words no longer serve the ego, they serve the rhythm of life itself. This is what I mean when I say expression becomes natural. It is the return of speech after silence, but purified music instead of noise. When you speak from that place, you don't teach. You remind. You don't explain. You evoke. You don't convince. You resonate. The voice that once belonged to you is now like a flute through which the universe plays its tune. The flute doesn't say, "Listen to me, I am making music." It simply allows the breath to move through it. The sound, the silence, and the listener are all the same event. And what you notice, quite curiously, is that the more effortless it becomes, the more powerful it sounds. People listen not because you are special, but because your words carry no demand. They feel no pressure, no agenda, only the gentle vibration of truth moving through simplicity. When you speak from this stillness, you no longer care whether you're understood. You have realized that misunderstanding is part of the great joke. Every mind hears through its own echo, so you let the echo play. You smile when people twist your meaning, because you know that even distortion serves the dance. Now, don't mistake this for carelessness. It's not that you no longer care about others, quite the opposite. You love them more deeply because you see them as yourself. But you've lost the need to fix them, to enlighten them, to save them. You understand that everyone's awakening unfolds exactly as it must, and that silence sometimes teaches better than speech. In this way, expression becomes not a mission, but a celebration. It's the laughter of life, realizing it can never be captured by doctrine. It's the wink of consciousness playing at being human again, fully, joyfully, absurdly human. You can tell when a person speaks from that place. There's no tension in their words, no insistence. The sentences come and go like waves, leaving no residue. Their speech feels like an invitation, not an instruction. They talk of the eternal as easily as they talk of their breakfast. They can discuss the infinite while tying their shoelaces. That is the flavor of natural expression, effortless, ordinary, profound. When you speak this way, you discover that you are not really communicating with others. You are communicating as them. The same consciousness that looks through your eyes is looking through theirs. The conversation becomes a mirror reflecting itself, words, meeting words, awareness, recognizing awareness. So, expression returns not as a duty, but as play. It becomes the cosmic improvisation, God talking to God, pretending to be two old friends sharing tea. And you realize something even funnier. You never stopped speaking. Every rustle of the leaves, every sigh of the wind, every laugh of a child was your voice all along. You simply forgot. When expression becomes natural, you no longer divide the sacred from the everyday. Every gesture, every conversation, every moment of silence is a sermon, and you are both the preacher and the congregation. It is one of the oldest habits of humankind. We can't leave a good thing alone. Every time a living truth dances through the mind, we rush to build a cage for it. We take what was alive, spontaneous, irreducible, and we carve it into commandments. Then we call the cage a temple and bow to the bars. You see, awakening is always a flash of freshness. It's the moment when the clouds part and you realize there was never a sky to begin with, only vast openness. But the mind, industrious as ever, says, "Wonderful, let's write this down. Let's form a society for the preservation of the infinite." And so, in the blink of an eye, the ungraspable becomes a manual. The living presence becomes a procedure. The flowing river is divided into little jars, carefully labeled Zen, Advaita, mysticism, nonduality. Then, like good collectors, we compare jars. Ah, mine's purer than yours. We forget that the water is not meant to be kept. It is meant to flow. Every great teacher knew this. The Buddha said, "My words are like a raft. When you've crossed the river, don't carry the raft on your back." But of course, we built museums for the rafts. We polish them. We argue about which raft had the best wood. We form sects and lineages over who owns the paddles, and the river laughs because it's still flowing, utterly untouched by all our effort to preserve it. When Christ spoke of the kingdom of heaven being within, he didn't mean start an institution to find it. But we humans love form. We love security. We want the mystery to behave itself, to sit still so we can organize it. So every revelation ends up as regulation. Every insight becomes an ideology. And each time, the spirit quietly slips out the back door, leaving the form arguing with itself. Now, don't misunderstand me. There's nothing wrong with forms. Forms are the clothing of life, rituals, teachings, scriptures, all beautiful garments. But problems begin when we forget that the garments are not the body. We start to worship the tailor instead of wearing the suit. The moment we say, "This is how awakening must look," we have already missed it. The moment we insist only through this method, this teacher, this lineage, we have traded freedom for comfort. Because doctrine is always secondhand. It is someone else's echo of the truth, not the sound itself. And yet, how easily we slip into the trap. Even as we laugh at others' dogmas, we quietly form our own "I am beyond religion. I am not attached. I have transcended the ego." These are doctrines too, only subtler, sneakier. The ego becomes the high priest of its own absence. The wise approach, then, is to hold every teaching lightly, as one might hold a soap bubble. Admire its colors, its shimmer, but know that it will burst, and that the bursting is part of its beauty. Do not cling to the words of sages, for the sages themselves were only ever pointing beyond themselves. The finger that points to the moon is not the moon, and when you finally see the moon, you stop sucking on the finger. So let every insight dissolve once it has done its work. Speak it, sing it, write it if you must, then let it go. Truth renews itself each moment. It needs no archives. A real teaching, you see, dies each time it is repeated, and is reborn each time it is lived. Therefore, beware of becoming the curator of your own enlightenment. Better to be the fool who forgets his wisdom every morning and rediscovers it at breakfast than the scholar who guards yesterday's revelation like a fossil. Because the living truth cannot be owned. It can only be danced. And when you stop trying to preserve it, when you let the doctrine fall apart, something miraculous happens. The insight breathes again. It laughs. It walks barefoot through your life, turning even your mistakes into scripture, your laughter into liturgy, your silence into prayer. So, my friends, do not cling to what you've understood. Let your understanding perish again and again until there is nothing left to protect. Only then will you see that the truth never needed guarding. It has been guarding you all along. Now, my friends, once the dust of doctrine settles, something delightful reveals itself. The whole thing, this business of being awake or asleep, teacher or student, holy or ordinary, was a masquerade all along. You see, the universe is not a solemn institution. It's a drama. And the divine, if you will, is not a tyrant, but an artist, endlessly dressing up as people, animals, planets, galaxies, all pretending to be something for the sheer joy of it. And here's the cosmic twist. Even the awakened are still in costume. The sage still plays a character, eats breakfast, forgets his keys, laughs at jokes that aren't funny. He gets tired, grumpy, sentimental. He wears the mask of humanity, because that's what the play calls for. Enlightenment is not an escape from the play, it's realizing that it is a play. When you see this, the entire tone of existence changes. You stop taking yourself quite so seriously. You stop trying to play your role perfectly, because you understand that perfection isn't the point. The point is the performance. The Zen masters used to say, before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. But they left out the punchline. After enlightenment, you whistle while you do it. You see, the secret of the play is that it was never meant to end. The goal was never to rip off the mask and say, aha, it was all fake. The mask is the face of the infinite, playing hide and seek with itself. When you realize this, you don't throw the mask away, you wear it lightly, lovingly. In fact, the greatest sages often appear the most ordinary. Why? Because they have stopped trying to be extraordinary. They've relaxed into their role. The self is no longer an imposter. It's a character freely played. And this brings an incredible lightness, a sense of humor about everything. You can laugh at your own tears. You can find beauty in your mistakes. You can say, ah, what a marvelous scene. This is me getting it wrong again. Because when you know you're acting, even your failures become part of the script. The world, in this view, is not a test or a trap, but a theater, not a problem to solve, but a game to enjoy. And the purpose of awakening is not to withdraw from the game, but to play it consciously. You become lucid within the dream, aware that the actor and the stage are one. And oh, what freedom that brings. You can play your part, the parent, the lover, the artist, the teacher, with total sincerity, and yet without the heaviness of belief. You bow deeply in the role, but you no longer confuse the mask with the player. That's what it means to walk in the world but not be of it. It means you can join the dance of life completely, laugh when it's funny, cry when it hurts, all the while knowing that beneath the costume, it's all the same dancer twirling through time. So, when you next find yourself caught in your own drama, arguing, striving, worrying about what comes next, pause for a moment and remember, it's all theater. The universe is improvising, and you are one of its favorite characters. And if you can laugh in the middle of your own performance, not mockingly, but with that deep, knowing laughter that comes from the belly of being, then you've understood the secret. You've remembered that the actor and the play were never two things at all. You are the laughter of God echoing through its own mask. And so, my friends, after all the seeking, all the striving, all the earnest spiritual gymnastics, we come to the punchline, the cosmic joke. The joke is that there was never anything to find. You have been what you were searching for all along. All the pilgrimages, the meditations, the disciplines, the doubts, they were the movements of the ocean trying to reach itself. The man who goes on a great spiritual journey finally arrives home, opens his own front door, and bursts out laughing, because there's no one left to congratulate, no achievement to frame, no secret to reveal. Only this, the quiet hum of existence that has been here all along, wearing every face, speaking through every mouth, playing every part. And that's why those who truly see tend to smile a lot. They know that the whole drama, the tragedies, the triumphs, the seriousness of human ambition is God playing hide and seek with himself. Consciousness pretending to be lost, just to enjoy the ecstasy of being found. You see, the universe is not a machine grinding out meaning. It's a dance. It doesn't go anywhere. It goes on. And every movement, even your confusion, your loneliness, your longing, is part of the rhythm. You were never separate from it. You were never out of tune. You were just momentarily hypnotized by the idea that you should be doing something else. When you awaken, you don't become superior, you become ordinary, gloriously ordinary. You chop wood, carry water, pay taxes, comfort a friend, forget your umbrella. But now, each act glows with the quiet realization that there is no you doing it. There's only the infinite, pretending to be human for the sheer fun of it. And that's the cosmic joke. The whole search for meaning collapses into laughter because the seeker and the sought were never apart. The teacher was the student, the question was the answer, the path was the destination. So what is left to do? Nothing except perhaps to laugh. To laugh deeply, kindly, reverently, not the laughter of ridicule, but the laughter of recognition. Because once you see the joke, you can't be fooled again. You can still cry, still fear, still hope, but somewhere inside, you know, it's all part of the show. And once you've seen that, something beautiful happens. You stop clinging to life, and so you start truly living. You stop fearing death, and so you begin to die beautifully. You stop searching for God and realize God was never lost. Now you may wonder, if all this is true, what am I supposed to do with it? And I would say nothing at all. Just watch. Just listen. Just be. Let life unfold without argument. Let the laughter of the universe echo through your heart. For you are not the cloud of loneliness passing through awareness. You are the sky itself. You are not the seeker of truth. You are the truth seeking itself. You are not the man who walks alone. You are the road, the walker, and the walking, all at once. And when that is seen, even for a moment, the whole struggle of becoming dissolves like mist in sunlight. There is nowhere to go, nothing to attain, nothing to prove. You realize that you were never missing, never broken, never incomplete. So rest, my friend. Rest in the knowing that you are the laughter of existence, the stillness behind all movement, the silence that listens through every sound. And when you meet another, a friend, a stranger, a lover, an enemy, know that you are greeting yourself. Smile gently, for you have never been apart. This is the final reminder, the simplest and the hardest of all. There is no awakening to achieve. There is only the remembering that you were never asleep. And when you remember this, even for the briefest moment, you'll find yourself laughing softly, freely, endlessly, at the grand, miraculous, eternal joke that God has been pretending to be you.